Well, I think it's brought tremendous value. I think it's been a win-win for Florida State and for the Atlantic Coast Conference, and that's what you want when you have that type of marriage. And it's really been interesting to me and gratifying to watch the involvement of Florida State, both the university and the athletic program. When Florida State came into the league, it brought tremendous credibility in football from a national perspective, and baseball as well. And wasn't that strong in terms of a total overall athletic program competitively, and now it's one of the best in the country. And the facilities are just beyond anything they were back when Florida State joined the league. So I think it's been something very, very positive for the Atlantic Coast Conference, and I think for Florida State as well. I had not met Coach Bowden at the time, and I did get to meet him, which I enjoyed, and of course got to know him much better after that, and particularly since coming into the commissioner's job. But Bob Goin was the athletic director. Bernie Slager was the president of the university at the time, and I was just very impressed as an AD in the league coming in, and I remember going back and talking to Mac Brown, who was a Florida State graduate and was our football coach at North Carolina at the time. And he said, "Man, what are you trying to do to me? You're going to make it awfully hard to win the football championship." And of course, Mac built a program that beat just about everybody but Florida State during that time. So he still reminds me of that. But it's worked out extraordinarily well. Well, we'll have to see. We didn't take Notre Dame with any side deal that they would join in football. It's at face value. The 5 games in football against ACC members was critical. We wouldn't have made the arrangement without that. And having Notre Dame in the league as a full member in all other sports is outstanding. They're a great fit for our league. We have more private institutions in the ACC than the other 4 major conferences have total, combined. And so we're a little different league in that standpoint, and Notre Dame feels very comfortable with that mix. We've got great public institutions, we've got great private institutions. And they relate well to that. The very strong academic school, obviously, which fits our academic profile well. Their Olympic sports, the sports that they're very good in and that they focus on, are the same sports that we in the ACC focus on in large measure. They love coming to the Southeast. They love going to the Northeast. So our expansion probably made us more attractive to Notre Dame than we would have been without that expansion in the Northeast. So it's a terrific relationship. We do have, as part of our agreement with Notre Dame through 2026, that if they join a conference in football, it will be the ACC, but I would not necessarily anticipate that. We periodically reevaluate the divisions and have discussions about it from a scheduling standpoint. Particularly with when Maryland did what they did, we brought Louisville in. We had some more discussion about it, and so far our schools, and that's where the determination is made. It's made by a vote of our schools. We always come back to the same place. So I'd have to say that the answer right now is yes, we are satisfied with it. If you look at the win-loss records and the competitiveness of the 2 divisions, it's extremely equal. And I think that has surprised some people because you have a tendency to look on paper and you think, well, that division's stronger than this division. But then when you look at the games played on the field and how that all has turned out over a period of 10 years, it's surprisingly equal. So, and you can't, I don't think you can react to what's going on at a particular time with divisions necessarily. The SEC had divisions before we did, and at one point in time the SEC East was considered you know, so much better than the SEC West. Well, in recent years it's been just the opposite. So you don't really change divisions based on short-term competitiveness or what might be perceived as imbalance. But at the same time, if there ever comes a time where our schools feel like it's time to make some adjustments in the divisions, you know, we would possibly do that. I do not consider that to be something that's imminent. Well, there might be, and that's one of the things we talk a lot about. You know, the one thing as commissioner that I struggle with, and all of my colleagues do, and you know, whether it's the Big Ten, the SEC, the Pac-12, as you get larger, it's really hard to play each other as often as you would like to play each other. And to me, being in a conference is playing your colleagues as regularly as you possibly can. So the whole scheduling issue is the biggest challenge, I think, of being a 14-member football league. And I think the Big Ten, the SEC, and you know, the Pac-12 would all say the same thing. Well, I think it's in the area probably of health and safety, and in the area of time commitment, and really taking a step back and evaluating both those areas. And I think our schools do a tremendous job taking care of our athletes. I say that right out of the chute, so to speak. But on the other hand, you know, with what we've learned in the sport of football, for example, about concussions, and concussions are problems not just in football, but you know, I think we want to make certain that medical coverage is there, not only during the student athlete's time in school and having eligibility, but later on as well, within reason. In terms of the time commitment, you know, it's tough being a student athlete and playing at the highest level and getting the quality education that we want our student athletes to have. But it's doable. But there has to be a certain balance there, and they are students, and they should be here first and foremost to get a degree and to experience as much of college as they can. Now, you know, an awful lot of students would love to play a sport that they love and have a free education. And we can't ever forget that, because that's a good deal. And yet, on the other hand, you don't want it to be totally all-consuming and interfere with the educational process, and as well as to some degree the social process. Our league has for years been very committed to Olympic sports. We take a great deal of pride in it, and I think that shows with those national championships that come with that. You know, certainly when you, over a 2-year period, you win football, men's basketball, and baseball in that 2-year period, that's a lot to crow about. But so are the other sports as well, because of the fact that our institutions have made such a commitment to the Olympic sports, and consequently the league does as well. we take a lot of pride in our competitiveness at the national level and across the board. And so when you win those national championships, it says a lot about the commitment that our schools make in those sports. It's very significant, and President Thrasher, I was very pleased he was willing to do that, because I think it's important that you have a president sitting on that board that works with the commissioners in overseeing the college football playoff and making critical decisions going forward. I think it's important for a president to be in that chair that that understands the playoff, whose program has experienced it, and certainly that's the case with President Thrasher and Florida State. I was with him in Pasadena last year, and he was able to see that firsthand, experience it firsthand, and he will do a tremendous job sitting around that table and representing not only Florida State but the Atlantic Coast Conference. Well, he is a terrific leader. You don't have to be around him very long to know that. And he's also very politically astute. That's very obvious. He's got a way about him that is extraordinarily effective, and he has a way about him that you immediately trust. And he's an easy person to get to know. He's made friends around the ACC table very quickly and built relationships very quickly, and that will serve Florida State extremely well. Good question. There's not much I can tell you at this point in time, other than that it continues to be a work in progress, and we're satisfied with that progress. We're not to a point where we're definitive yet in what we intend to do or when. We've got a great partner in ESPN, and those discussions can continue. A lot of developing a channel that's 24/7 ACC has to do with how you do it and when you do it. So we've taken a look at the other channels that are out there, and they've all evolved in different ways. You've got the most recent, the SEC, who is with the same partner that we're with, that was extraordinarily successful. It was timed right in terms of having the leverage to have the distribution, which leads to the dollars and the exposure. The Pac-12 is struggling in their third year, I guess it is. The Longhorn Network is struggling. The Big Ten is very successful now. Its first 3 years, not so much. They really had some struggles, both in terms of exposure and dollars. So what you want to do, if you go in that direction, is to time it in a way that you don't have some of the heartburn of some of the other channels that have been startups. And that's why we're being very thorough in how we evaluate this, along with ESPN.